It is late 2026. Electricity prices spike overnight in major cities, not because of war or natural disaster, but because the grid is full. Rolling restrictions are announced quietly. Utilities do not call them blackouts. They call them load management events. Data centers stay online. Residential neighborhoods do not. Across North America and Europe, power demand has crossed a threshold planners insisted was decades away. Gigawatt-scale data centers now consume more electricity than entire cities. They do not negotiate with households. They pre-purchase capacity years in advance. When supply tightens, the market does exactly what it was designed to do. It reallocates power to whoever can pay the most. The middle class cannot. The result does not look like collapse. It looks like bills. Utility statements double. Connection fees rise. Insurance premiums climb. Rent increases follow, justified as energy pass-through costs. Nothing is framed as a crisis. Everything is framed as adjustment. For years, the artificial intelligence boom was described as digital, weightless, clean. Software, algorithms, cloud services. What was never emphasized is that every data center is a physical object anchored to land, concrete, copper, steel, water, and electricity. Massive electricity. The servers do not run on ideas. They run on commodities. Cheap credit turned code into infrastructure. Infrastructure turned into commodity demand. Commodity demand now collides with physical limits. This is the moment the illusion breaks. Data centers do not compete with each other alone. They compete with hospitals, homes, transit systems, and municipal services. When grids reach capacity, someone is priced out. The system does not ask who deserves power. It follows bids. You were never bidding. Governments respond predictably. They subsidize utilities. They cap rates temporarily. They promise upgrades. Behind the scenes, they authorize emergency spending and fast-track generation projects funded with debt. The costs do not disappear. They are deferred and socialized. This is debasement in its modern form. The public experiences this as confusion. Technology stocks rise while daily life becomes more expensive. Headlines celebrate innovation while households ration heat and air conditioning. People sense something is wrong but cannot name it. What is happening is simple. A financial system built on paper claims has collided with a world governed by physical inputs. When digital growth demands real resources, those resources reprice everything downstream. You're not paying for artificial intelligence directly. You are paying through energy, rent, insurance, and taxes. You are not an observer of this transition. You are the collateral. The machine is not malfunctioning. It is reallocating values exactly as designed, and this is only the beginning. The thesis. The four-stage pattern. History does not unfold through surprises. It unfolds through limits. Every dominant economic system follows the same four-stage financial pattern because all systems are ultimately constrained by physical reality. Technology changes, tools evolve, the mechanism does not. Stage one is hard money and dominance. An empire rises anchored to something real. Gold, silver, land, energy, or productive output sets the boundary of expansion. Money represents a claim on physical reality, not a promise of future growth. Because claims are limited, trust concentrates naturally. Prices are stable. Savings retain value. Growth reflects real capacity. Power consolidates because the system is disciplined by scarcity. Stage two is expansion and debasement. Security commitments multiply. Social promises accumulate. Taxation reaches its political limit. The system discovers abstraction. Money becomes credit. Credit becomes leverage. Claims expand faster than physical capacity. Asset prices rise. Debt is rebranded as innovation and progress. The system appears stronger precisely as discipline weakens. This is the stage where technology becomes narrative cover. Growth is described as digital, efficient, and dematerialized. The physical cost is deferred. Energy, materials, and land are treated as infinite inputs. The system functions only because those limits have not yet been tested. Stage three is crisis and loss of control. Eventually, claims collide with reality. Debt service overtakes productivity. Infrastructure strains. Energy systems tighten. Policy tools lose effectiveness. Rate cuts, subsidies, and emergency programs stabilize appearances while worsening the underlying imbalance. The financial layer grows while the real economy stalls. Control is lost not through political failure, but through arithmetic. Stage four is the reset. The system cannot honor its promises in real terms. It does not announce failure, it manages it. Currency is diluted. Costs are socialized. Rules are rewritten. Wealth transfers from holders of paper claims to holders of physical assets and strategic inputs. This stage is administrative, not dramatic. It is justified as a necessity. The modern economy is no longer approaching this stage. What was marketed as digital efficiency now demands massive energy, metals, water, and land. The system must choose between honoring paper growth or honoring physical limits. It chooses paper. That choice guarantees debasement. Once the mechanism reaches stage 4, reversal is mathematically impossible. The system can only continue by consuming purchasing power stored in currency and wages. This is not ideology. It is structured. Historical proof. The rule of 3. Every time an economic system collides with physical limits, the outcome is presented as unprecedented. It never is. History leaves behind a clear signature when financial claims grow faster than real resources. Different centuries, different technologies, the same mechanism. 3 cases prove this pattern without ambiguity. Rome is the first proof. Rome's early dominance rested on monetary credibility. The silver denarius functioned as a trusted unit of account because it contained real metal of consistent weight. Soldiers accepted it for pay, merchants accepted it for trade, and the state accepted it for taxes. Money worked because it was anchored to something scarce and verifiable. Expansion disrupted that balance. Legions multiplied. Borders stretched. Roads, fortifications, and bureaucracies expanded. Political loyalty became expensive. Taxation could not scale fast enough to fund imperial ambition. Rome faced the same constraint every empire eventually faces: reduce expansion or alter the money. Rome chose the money. Under Emperor Nero, the silver content of the denarius was reduced. The coin looked the same. Its face and legal value remained enforced. The reduction was framed as a technical necessity, not a crisis. This was the first fracture between appearance and substance. Once that fracture existed, it widened with every fiscal decision. Debasement became policy rather than exception. Each successive emperor reduced silver content further to fund present obligations. By the 3rd century, Rome introduced the Antoninianus, officially valued at 2 denarii, while containing far less than double the silver. It was not an innovation. It was desperation disguised as reform. Prices responded immediately. Soldiers demanded more coins for the same service. Merchants raised prices to protect themselves from dilution. Long-term contracts broke down. Trust decayed gradually, then suddenly. The state responded not by restoring metal content, but by issuing more claims and enforcing acceptance by law. It fell when money ceased to function as a store of value. Enforcement replaced confidence. Taxes were demanded in harder terms while wages were paid in debased coin. The economy fractured into tiers. Those close to power held land, food, and resources. Ordinary citizens held promises that decayed with each issue. The reset was unavoidable once debasement became permanent. Weimar Germany is the second proof. After the First World War, Germany faced reparations totaling 132 billion gold marks. Gold marks were not abstract accounting units. They represented fixed weight in metal. Germany did not possess the reserves required to pay. The debt could not be settled honestly through production or taxation. The state chose printing. Initially, the system appeared functional. Obligations were met. Workers were paid. Businesses continued operating. This early phase created the illusion that currency creation could substitute for real settlement. That illusion persisted only as long as confidence remained intact. As printing accelerated, velocity followed. Holding cash became irrational. Prices rose not because merchants were greedy, but because money itself was decaying. Bread prices moved from 160 marks to billions, then hundreds of billions. Savings accounts were erased. Fixed incomes collapsed. The population adapted logically. People spent it immediately. They converted paper into goods, land, tools, and foreign currency. Hyperinflation was not chaos. It was arithmetic enforcing reality. A currency that can be created without limit cannot function as a store of value once trust breaks. Those who understood the mechanism early survived. Insiders converted marks into factories and farmland. Exporters held foreign currency. Those who trusted savings accounts, pensions, and fixed wages were destroyed. The transfer was not moral or immoral. It was mechanical. Weimar did not collapse because of panic. It collapsed because claims overwhelmed physical capacity. The modern system is the third proof. After the Second World War, the Bretton Woods framework anchored global currencies to the US dollar and the dollar to gold. This imposed discipline. The United States could not issue unlimited claims without consequence. That restraint ended in 1971. On August 15, 1971, President Nixon closed the gold window. Foreign governments could no longer redeem dollars for gold. Bretton Woods ended. The final physical anchor was removed. From that moment forward, the dollar became pure credit. This created the exorbitant privilege. The United States could issue the world's reserve currency without immediate settlement. Deficits expanded, debt accumulated, financial markets exploded in size, derivatives multiplied, paper claims grew far faster than real output. The system appeared stable because confidence replaced constraint. What followed was not sustainable prosperity, but distortion. Asset prices rose faster than wages. Debt became normalized. Saving in currency became punishment. Growth was celebrated while purchasing power declined. This was not accidental. It was the predictable outcome of debasement. First, money is trusted because it is anchored. Second, obligations grow beyond capacity. Third, the anchor is diluted or removed. Fourth, claims expand until confidence fails. Finally, the reset transfers wealth from holders of paper promises to holders of physical assets. Timing is the critical insight. Elites always recognize the mechanism before the public. In Rome, senators held land and grain contracts. In Weimar, insiders held factories and foreign currency. After 1971, asset owners benefited, while wage earners absorbed inflation. Debasement never requires announcement. It operates silently through dilution. Inflation is not rising prices. Rising prices are evidence of currency decay. The real event is the transfer of purchasing power. The rule of three proves one fact beyond dispute. Once a system removes its constraint, reversal is impossible. No empire voluntarily restores discipline after debasement begins. Political pressure always favors short-term survival over long-term stability. Rome's collapse was regional. Weimar's collapse was national. The post-1971 system is global. Every pension fund, bond market, insurance pool, and savings account is tied to the same unanchored monetary structure. This scale makes the current reset unavoidable and synchronized. There is no external stabilizer left. When settlement is demanded, the system must choose between open default and silent debasement. History shows which option is always chosen. The mechanism is not breaking, it is completing its cycle. The modern trap. Data centers as a commodity weapon. The present crisis does not announce itself as financial failure. It presents itself as infrastructure demand. Data centers are framed as neutral digital necessities of modern life. In reality, they are the most resource-intensive industrial facilities ever normalized inside civilian economies. This is where the paper system collides with physical limits. Every large-scale data center requires massive electricity, copper, steel, concrete, water, and land. These are not optional inputs, they are binding constraints. What changed after 2020 was not technology, but financing. Cheap credit turned software growth into physical expansion at industrial scale. Artificial intelligence transformed server farms into permanent energy sinks. This is the trap. Financial markets treated AI as weightless growth. Utilities experienced it as load stress. Grids, designed for households, hospitals, and manufacturing, are now forced to serve single facilities, consuming power equivalent to small cities. Unlike households, data centers do not respond to price signals by reducing demand. They pre-purchase capacity, lock contracts, and displace everyone else. The market does what markets always do under scarcity. It reallocates supply toward the highest bidder. That bidder is not the middle class. Electricity prices rise first, not evenly, but structurally. Fixed fees increase, peak pricing becomes permanent. Insurance premiums follow as utilities pass through volatility. Rent rises next, justified as energy adjustment. Local taxes increase to fund grid upgrades financed with debt. None of this is framed as inflation. It is framed as modernization. Governments respond predictably. They subsidize utilities temporarily. They cap rates selectively. They promise renewable expansion and grid modernization. Behind the scenes, they authorize emergency borrowing to accelerate generation capacity. The cost does not disappear. It is deferred and socialized. Meanwhile, commodity demand accelerates. Copper becomes a bottleneck. Transformers face multi-year backlogs. Steel and concrete costs rise as new facilities compete with housing and public infrastructure. Water scarcity intensifies in regions hosting server clusters. Each constraint feeds the next. This is not a shortage cycle. It is a structural repricing of physical inputs. At the geopolitical level, the logic hardens. Energy, metals, and industrial capacity become strategic weapons. Countries that control power generation, grid manufacturing, and commodity supply gain leverage. Those that rely on imports absorb volatility. This is why energy policy quietly becomes national security policy. China understands this dynamic. So do other industrial powers. Reducing exposure to paper claims while securing physical supply chains is not ideological. It is arithmetic positioning inside stage 4. The public experiences this as confusion. Technology companies report record profits. Equity markets remain elevated. At the same time, households face rising bills and declining purchasing power. Productivity gains do not translate into affordability. Effort no longer produces stability. That disconnect is the signal. Paper wealth continues to function on screens because it is denominated in a unit that can be diluted. Physical inputs cannot be diluted. When demand rises against fixed supply, prices move relentlessly upward. This forces the system to choose which claims to honor. Every dollar held in cash loses purchasing power as utilities reprice. Every fixed income erodes as energy costs compound. Every small business absorbs higher overhead while competing against capital-rich infrastructure players. The middle class holds claims that depend on affordability. Affordability disappears first. This is why the data center boom matters. It converts abstract financial growth into unavoidable commodity pressure. It exposes the lie that digital expansion is decoupled from physical limits. The system cannot slow this process without collapsing asset valuations built on perpetual growth. It cannot fund the transition without debasing the currency. It cannot protect households without choosing them over capital. It chooses capital. This is the modern trap. It is fought with grids, contracts, and financing. Those who control physical inputs dictate terms. Those who hold paper claims absorb the adjustment. The reset does not arrive as a crash. It arrives at a permanent cost. And once physical limits assert dominance, the outcome is locked. The wealth transfer. What follows does not collapse in the way people imagine it. It is a transfer. Paper wealth does not disappear. It is repriced. Currency, bonds, and financial claims lose purchasing power while physical inputs reassert control over the system. Energy, metals, land, water, and infrastructure become the real balance sheet. This is how every reset resolves. In Rome, landowners and food controllers survived while wage earners were diluted. In Weimar, factories and farmland retained value while savings vanished. After 1971, asset owners benefited while labor absorbed inflation. The same structure governs the present moment. Data centers accelerate the shift by turning digital growth into commodity scarcity. The system protects capital-intensive infrastructure because it underpins future claims. Households are residual. Their costs rise quietly. Their savings erode slowly. Their stability dissolves without announcement. This is not policy failure. It is the mechanism completing its cycle. Paper promises require trust. Physical inputs require nothing. As the commodity war intensifies, wealth moves toward what cannot be printed and away from what can. That movement is irreversible. Subscribe to Epic Atlas to understand how these machines are built, how debasement operates, and why history always resolves the same way when paper collides with physical reality. This is not fear. This is structure.